Y'all look, I'm about to, y'all want to get on the camera about to say some hot shit. Y'all know I'm like the YouTube king now right now, yeah. Chop, come here.
The Magnolia Projects, officially known as the C.J. Peet Public Housing Development, was one of the housing projects of New Orleans. As part of the ongoing redevelopment of the housing projects of New Orleans, the area has been renamed Harmony Oaks. The Magnolia was among the largest projects in New Orleans, housing approximately 2,100 people. It is also the home of numerous hip-hop artists such as Soulja Slim and Juvenile. After Hurricane Katrina, a lot of families from New Orleans that were relocated to cities such as Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia returned to what was left of the city. At this time, a lot of the younger kids from these areas returned home and became what some of them called the New Orleans. A group of friends from the Harmony Oaks area would often meet up at the A.L. Davis Park. A good amount of the friends were rappers and went by the moniker Bird Gang, not to be confused with the famous New York City rap group. They would often film their days at the park, displaying their talents. These videos can be found on YouTube. One of the more memorable individuals was Gerard Roy the Prince Gray. The court document reads as follows. On the morning of July 8, 2014, Christopher Chambers and 8 family members, 5 minors and 3 adults, went to the A.L. Davis Park to play basketball. One of the adults who accompanied Mr. Chambers to the park was his younger cousin, Mark Mitchell. While at the park, Christopher and his cousin Mark had 2 encounters on the basketball court with Roy the Prince. The first encounter was primarily between Roy the Prince and Mark Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell stated to Roy the Prince that his group had winners and could use the basketball court next. Roy the Prince replied, "I hope you make it home, homie." Mr. Mitchell described this encounter as a mild-mannered verbal dispute. He testified that it did not seem like a big deal at the time. He acknowledged, however, that he believed the encounter might turn into a physical altercation or fight, but not a shooting. Mr. Chambers witnessed the first encounter and heard Roy the Prince tell his cousin Mark that he hoped he made it home. Nonetheless, Mr. Chambers testified that because they were just playing basketball, he was unsure if Roy the Prince was serious. After the first encounter, Christopher Chambers left the park and went to the grocery store across the street to get some candy and drinks. When he was walking back to the park, he noticed the man who ultimately shot him, John Terry Pootie Bernard, on the neutral ground between the store and the park. After he returned to the basketball court, Christopher waited for the basketball game that was in session to end. During this time, he said Roy the Prince was pacing back and forth on the court. At some point, Christopher saw Roy the Prince go into the back with several men, including Pootie, and get into a huddle. Christopher and his family members headed back onto the basketball court and attempted to claim winners. Roy the Prince then walked between Mr. Mitchell and Christopher and stated to Christopher,
"You flexing, big man?"
In response, Mr. Chambers told him,
"Come on, man. What you doing all this for? Like you own the court or something? Like, come on, man."
Mr. Mitchell and the other family members told Christopher to chill out, we at their house. As he prepared to leave, Christopher sensed someone behind him. That someone was Pootie. At this point, neither Christopher nor Mr. Mitchell had interacted or exchanged words with Pootie. Christopher then turned around and tried to shake Pootie's hand. Pootie said, "F that," and started shooting. Christopher was shot 3 times, once in the neck and twice in the chest. When Mr. Mitchell saw his cousin was shot and falling down, he ran back towards his cousin. When he tried, Pootie shot him as well. Mr. Mitchell was shot twice, once in his leg and once in his chest. He further testified that he was hospitalized for 2 months for a collapsed lung and that he almost died. On the day of the shooting, Pootie testified that he arrived at the park around noon. He denied bringing a gun to the park. After playing basketball for a while, he said that he heard fussing on the court between Roy the Prince and one of the victims. After the fussing, Pootie said that Melly, another one of his friends, approached him. Pootie explained that he and Melly had been good friends since the 5th or 6th grade. He stated that Melly gave him a gun, which he tucked in his waistband. He also said when Melly gave him the gun, Roy the Prince was just a few feet directly behind Melly. He stated that no one else was around. After giving him the gun, Pootie said that Melly instructed him to handle that, or I'm going to handle you. He said that Roy the Prince walked past him and stated, "You heard what he said." Shortly after he turned himself into the police, Pootie gave 3 different statements. In his first statement, Pootie stated that he was at the park for about 1 hour before the shooting. He explained that he was playing basketball. After shots were fired, he stated that he dropped the ball and took off running. Pootie described his first statement as a bunch of lies. In his second statement, he repeated the story of being at the park, hearing shots, and taking off running. In his third statement, Pudi admitted that he was the shooter, but he claimed that he fired the shots because Christopher was acting aggressive. He also stated that Roy the Prince was not at the park on the day of the shooting. Pudi told detectives that he lied when he said that Roy the Prince was not at the park because he feared retribution against his family if he implicated Roy the Prince in the shooting. Although Pudi denied being promised anything by either the state or the judge to testify, he said that he was hoping to get his 100-year sentence reduced. On May 25, 2016, Gerard Roy the Prince Gray was convicted of 2 counts of attempted second-degree murder. On June 17, 2016, Criminal District Court Judge Lori White sentenced him to 50-year prison terms on the 2 attempted murder counts, meaning he was sentenced to 100 years. Mr. Gray contends the evidence was insufficient to convict him. He cites the lack of physical evidence connecting him to the offenses. He argues that the jailhouse phone call and YouTube video evidence was inconclusive and that Mr. Bernard's testimony should not be believed. It is also recorded in court documents that neither Christopher Chambers nor Mark Mitchell seen Gerard give Pudi a signal to shoot them. A petition for the retrial of Gerard Eric Gray was posted on change.org. The petition is now closed. On June 28, 2017, the state of Louisiana denied his appeal. Melly was never brung up on charges for the incident. He was murdered on July 2, 2015.